The Liberal government wants to change how the House of Commons works. Opposition MPs are calling proposed changes, quote, political thuggery. You don't hear that word very often. And a, quote, power grab. Today, a committee filibuster over it was delayed, but they are preparing to restart and not back down until the government drops its plans to reform Parliament. Is the House due for a modern facelift, or is the government's plan flawed? Joining me now from the foyer of the House of Commons, three gentlemen who've actually thought a lot about this without all the partisan stuff going on. They've worked on a new book that is in pre-sales, I'm told, but they'll talk about it now anyway. It's called Turning Parliament Inside Out, Practical Ideas for Reforming Canada's Democracy. Good to see you. Liberal MP Scott Simms, NDP MP Kennedy Stewart, they helped edit that book. Conservative MP Michael Cooper also contributed a chapter to the book. And I should say the other editor of the book is Michael Chong. But we talked to him on Friday, and he's also in a leadership race. So I thought it would make sense to have you gentlemen on. Let's start with you, Kennedy Stewart. You helped edit this book. It's all about reforming democracy. What sort of came out of the book in terms of the way the House works now? Is there a consensus that things should change?
Yeah, well, maybe talking a little bit about the origins of the book will help understand where it went. In the last Parliament, Michael Chong, of course, brought forward his Reform Act, and I had e-petitions brought forward. Yeah. We supported each other, and we decided, hey, we should write something down. We recruited Scott, and we decided we needed a three, cross-partisan editorial board, and then we sought different MPs, all sitting MPs that would contribute to the book, from all parties, from all across Canada, different regions. And we really left it open. The only thing that was off the table was electoral reform. Yeah. That we weren't allowed to talk about that. So what came out of it was each author had independence on each chapter, which was good. But then we have an introductory and a concluding chapter that's written by the three editors. What came out of it is there definitely is space to modernize. I mean, what the book will tell you is that, in Parliament, when these rules were written, their parties were very, very weak, and now they're very strong. Yeah. And so that would be the dominant theme, is that the dominance of party leadership, and then what we can do to kind of give MPs more power. And the other thing that came out of the book was that we need more space to talk about these ideas. So when something goes into PROC or into a committee, you're always talking about votes. Like in the UK, they have something called the Hansard Society, which looks at this kind of thing all the time. So we're kind of pushing for more of a space to talk about these issues. Okay,
and Scott Simms, for the average Canadian who's not, as nerdy maybe as we are about the way that place works, yes. Why is it important to make these changes? Why does this matter for the way democracy functions?
Well, I think it matters in several reasons. Before I get into that, though, I think Kennedy was being a little bit modest. He was actually the driving force behind this to get things going. And I give him all the compliments in the world. And I want to do that publicly as well as privately, but I think over the past little while, change has been slow. He talked earlier about his motion to change petitions, Michael Chong's ideas, including Michael's, Michael, and also, of course, you had Scott Reid doing the same thing. Yeah. But they've been small changes at a snail's pace, and I remember several years ago, I hosted a member of the European Parliament, and she watched question period and a vote, and she had a point. She said, I like the way you guys debate. It's very fierce. But why do you guys vote like it's the 19th century? and it was brought to my attention that, we really need to have a discussion, not just from former parliamentarians and academics, but what about current parliamentarians? We too can talk about this.
Yeah, this is the idea that you all have to stand to vote instead of maybe just electronic voting. I like that you all stand up. So I don't know. I think it makes you more responsible or something. But let's bring Michael Cooper in. So you're a relatively new MP, and yet you have ideas about how this should change. So what do you think is the most important thing that needs fixing? And then we'll talk about what's actually happening now and why we're not maybe a fan of how it's working. Anyway, what's the big thing that needs fixing for you, Michael Cooper?
Well, I contributed a chapter on question period, so that's I had some ideas around question period on changes. But look, this is a debate that has been ongoing. It's been ongoing for more than 30 years in terms of parliamentary reform, and everything from a Triple-E Senate to how do you strengthen parliamentary committees to how do you give backbench government MPs more room to breathe to how do you change question period. And the reason this debate has been ongoing is that Canadians are not satisfied with how Parliament works. And frankly, a lot of members of Parliament are not satisfied. And so this is an opportunity to continue the dialogue, to continue the discussion, to put out some ideas. from right across the political spectrum, because this is not a partisan issue. This is an issue that members right across the spectrum recognize that changes are necessary and debate is healthy.
And that's why this conversation is important. It's why the book is important, but it is not what is being reflected right now necessarily. This is not the level of debate we are hearing about this in the House right now. So maybe we can think about that for a minute. Kennedy Stewart, what do you make of the proposals that are on the table right now by the government? Do you have problems with them, or do you have problems with the way this has unfolded?
Well, I think what we're seeing is, your behavior, political behavior is bounded by the institutions. The rules that we operate under right now are kind of forcing us into having discussions in the way we're having them. And that's why we're saying we should look at reform. So, right, I mean, what's going to happen is we're all going to split back into our partisan boxes and say what we like and what we don't like, right? But what we're trying to say with this book is that we kind of have to move beyond that, especially on measures as important as this. I disagree with a number of the changes in the discussion paper, and I'm sad that we have a short period of discussion before it comes to a vote. But I don't disagree that we have to look at the issues that are within the discussion paper. I just hope we could look at them outside of Proc first.
Yeah, I'm not, and without a partisan lens, which I don't know if that's even possible. Scott Sims, I mean, you're a Liberal. How do you feel about what was sort of proposed during the election? But I guess it's the time crunch, it's the way this has unfolded that's got people a little bit upset. So what do you make of how this is going to go forward?
Good question. I hope it goes forward in a substantial way. I mean, I know we're getting bogged down in the process right now. I personally would like to have a study going ASAP. Now, it's interesting that here I am talking about this book and how all of us can be involved. So I find that in writing a chapter in this book and helping out Kennedy, it's also, and as we go through this debate, it's also a way of looking at me in the mirror and saying, listen, you better start practicing what you preach. So I'm going through this debate right now in as open-minded as I can be. We have a fundamental difference on some of the process, there's no doubt about it, but what I like about this is that the discussion is out there on all these elements. And even though there's a filibuster going on now, I'm actually enjoying it to the fact that I'm learning from this filibuster. I just like to get beyond that now to bring in some witnesses.
But and sorry to put you on the spot, but as a Liberal MP, have you said to the House Leader and others, let's take the time that's needed to do this properly. I've given it a lot of thought. I know other people are passionate about it. Have you said slow down so we can do this the right way?
I've had several discussions with the House Leader. It goes back to October. So I'm hoping that we'll have something really soon that we can table in the House and I'll have a discussion about it. But we've had some pretty thorough discussions, and not just with the House Leader, but also with the other members too. And granted, it's a fight right now, I know that, but by the same token, we are going through it in a healthy way, I think.
Michael Cooper, and I did hear that today, that there might be some talks going on between the parties about something that everybody could live with here, at least to have a conversation and a discussion the way you three are right now.
Well, we're certainly open to having a discussion. We, like the NDP, have some issues with some of the proposals in the discussion paper. Our concern, though, primarily rests on the process that the government is going about on this issue, to try to unilaterally change the standing orders without the consent of all parties. And that's where the problem lies. So I hope that the government will take a step back and reconsider, and we can have a real dialogue.
Okay, I'm gonna do something terrible maybe to all three of you. I want you to tell me the one thing that you would like to see changed because it matters to you or to Canadians. I'll start with you, Michael Cooper. The one thing you'd like to see changed in there.
Well, I'd like to see a question period change to give less reliance on lists, so that individual members can stand up on their feet and ask questions.
Spontaneous, crazy. That's a crazy idea.
And I was in Botswana, of all places, last week, and I watched question period from the gallery, and here's something that I saw: real questions and real answers. What a novel concept.
I'm down with that as a reporter. Kennedy Stewart, the one thing you'd like to see changed?
Well, the thing I worked on in the last Parliament was electronic petitioning, and And what we didn't get was this ability to trigger debates in the House.
Yeah.
So if you have 50,000 or 100,000 signatures, you would actually get your issue debated in the House. And I really think we need to decentralize power. And I think a lot of my colleagues would agree with that. We review e-petitions next year, so maybe that could come forward.
Okay, Scott Sims.
This is where the third person agrees with everybody else.
No, you have to have your own idea.
Okay, own idea.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say in the beginning the idea of a question period that Michael had.
Yeah.
That's already used. I want, as my chapter outlines, I want provincial backbenchers to be more involved in the federal conversation, the federation. Instead of having just premiers and provincial ministers be involved in a national dialogue, provincial backbenchers, they're smart people, great experiences, they deserve a bigger say.
Okay, I don't know if this is objective, but I'm not sure that I care. I would like it to be, and this is already a rule, I would like it to be enforced that you cannot read your answers. It drives me batty.
Okay.
Actually,
drives me batty.
Volume 2.
Yeah.
Volume 2 of the book.
That's right.
I'll write that chapter. Don't read your answers, just memorize them. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll see where it goes. That was a nonpartisan discussion. I appreciate it. Scott Sims, Michael Cooper, Kennedy Stewart. Good to see you guys.